Back on it, man.
Back on it, man.
Back with another soccer one. You know how excited I get with these soccer ones.
Hey, Paella, man. Wing one up here.
It's hard to believe this place used to be an internment camp.
Watch the fish, Marge. Watch the fish. Open wide for some soccer! That's right, everyone. We're back at the Sports Experience Podcast, and I'm here with my co-host, Chris Quinn. I'm co-host, Dom DiTolla, and we're back on the pitch today.
Yeah, we're playing, man. We're talking some soccer. We're talking a man who just didn't live up to the hype. But to be honest, there was too much hype. So
There was entirely too much hype.
But we're talking Freddy Adu.
Freddy Adu. Oh, yeah.
If you're American and you essentially were alive in the 90s and then in the 2000s, you know about Freddy Adu.
Yeah, Chris, when you brought his name up last week, I'm like, I actually know this guy.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
your eyes lit up. You're like, I've actually seen games where he's been in. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
I've read about this person before.
Yeah, exactly.
But Freddy Adu, born June 2nd, 1989 in the port city of Tama, Ghana, actually not originally born in the States.
Yeah, so his mother entered a lottery that I think the United States gives something like 55,000 green cards to people who want to immigrate to America, and they actually won, which people are saying it's a lot like winning the lottery.
I was going to say, is it better than the regular lottery?
Well, they were saying like millions of people apply for it, and it is a rigorous application process. And
so much paperwork.
I thought it was interesting. He said they were able to move to America because they were upper middle class. His father and mother were together in Ghana. And as soon as they moved to America, his father actually left like months after they moved, and they became poor.
Oh,
and he said it was such a culture shock, even though they were living in America and it was better. They were like still, his mom was working 2 jobs and she became a single mother out of nowhere.
Did they explain why he left, or he was just like, screw this shit?
Yeah, they didn't really get into it, and I never really looked it up. So I didn't, you know what I mean? Some people don't deserve my time.
No.
But I'll say
dads.
this. Yeah, I'll say this. There was something that happened in Ghana that reverberates throughout his whole career. Is they were upper middle class, so he was able to buy soccer balls. And when he was 6, 7, and 8, right before he moved, he would play with these older 11, 12-year-olds because he was able to supply soccer balls all the time. And they would allow him to play, so he became essentially like years ahead of how old he was. You know?
It's kind of like that kid in your neighborhood who has the newest gaming system, and he's kind of a douche, or he's like younger than you, but it's like, hey, let's hang out.
Yes,
you know?
But then you go over there and he just dominates you at Street Fighter, and you're just like, all right, I don't want to play video games anymore.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm taking my shit and going home.
Yeah. So they moved to Maryland, Rockville, Maryland, right outside of D.C. Like I was saying, he was living in a nice area, a nice neighborhood, went to a nice school, and didn't really understand how soccer works. So in Ghana, soccer was on like every street corner, and that's how you would play. It was essentially
there's no field. It's not organized. It's just like a bunch of people like playing pickup games.
And it's essentially like street ball in basketball in America, where you just kind of like show up at the playground and you're like, you playing? We're playing. Let's go. Yeah. But in America, it is very structured, and you have to.
It's for white soccer moms named Karen and their children, pretty much.
One of the best things said about American soccer is still, like American youth soccer, is when people think about it, they don't think of the players. The thought is always soccer moms. And when that changes...
Always trying to pick them up in the parking lot after
that's Dom's.
What's up, Karen?
He's trying to hit dingers, and they're like, this isn't baseball.
I love that cardigan that you're wearing. Are you free on Friday?
I know what time his practice is. All right, it's starting to get pretty creepy.
Oh, God.
So he's playing on just like they were just playing at school, and this kid in his class was just like, you have to play for my team. And he went and played for his team as like a special player, and he ended up scoring every single goal for his team in this fucking tourney.
That's legit, dude.
And then the best team in the state came in, who ended up losing against them, and they were like, who is this kid? How do we get him? And he ended up playing with this club team from age 8 to about 10, 11. And this club team, who was like the biggest club team in Maryland. So some states have more money injected into soccer, and Maryland's luckily a state that does.
Interesting.
And
wow.
all the way back then.
Wow.
So like they had these bigger clubs that would poach players, luckily, and they ended up going to this tournament in Italy.
Yeah, I read about that.
I thought that was going to pique
under
your
14 Olympic development program or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was going to pique your interest, and he was 11.
Yeah. And he's
10, 11 is what I heard.
under
I think
14, but you're way under 14.
Yes, so he's 10. I think he might have turned 11 like a week or two after or some shit like that. But he ends up beating all these teams, all these top Italian youth teams.
Lazio, Juventus, shit like that. Yeah.
And the one I brought up before we started this podcast, Inter Milan. So Inter Milan comes in, and because these teams are like, hey, this kid, because I think he scores like 95% of their goals.
Yeah, led the team in scoring, was the MVP, yeah.
So Inter Milan came in, because I think everybody kind of came in and like, hey, we want to sign this kid. But Inter Milan had the biggest deal. They were like, hey, we're going to give you $750,000 to move to Italy and have this kid for, I think it was like an 8 to 10 year contract. So it's a youth contract where they just put you through their academy.
Yeah. But that's still a long time.
Well, he's 10. He's 10, 11. Yeah, so they're saying,
amazing.
But they're saying like, hey, come here and you can pretty much develop. And whenever you're ready to be a senior player, we're ready for you. And his mom, I think it did the right choice, but if you look at the trajectory of his career, maybe it wasn't the right choice.
No, she needed to just be like, fuck it, we're Marinovicing this shit right now.
Well, with the state...
we're Messiing this. He's our meal ticket.
With the state of American soccer, I think it was wrong of her to not take him to Italy.
Yeah, because it's not like...
I don't think
it's not like it's a baseball team in Japan or something.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Like, yeah, that's weird because like soccer around the world, and it's Inter Milan, like one of the top teams.
I don't think he would have ended up playing for the United States internationally. He probably would have played for Ghana or Italy.
Oh,
wow. If this was the move that went. So I'm just saying it was technically lucky for us Americans because he put so much publicity into the game, so much, hype. But for his career, this could have been,
Oh man, that could have been game changing.
Yep.
I wonder if he looks back, he's just like at a bar and like, I could have gone to Italy once.
Well, I talked about before the podcast, we like to chat, and I said this wasn't the moment that he looks back on and regrets. It's another one. So,
interesting. I can't wait for that.
So he comes back to America and he goes to IMG Academy, which is, I was telling you, which is modeled after the Bollettieri Academy, which we brought up in the Andre Agassi episode. And it was pretty much modeled so these kids who are extremely talented at sports can go and essentially not focus in on school and just focus in on sports. So he went as an 11-year-old and teamed up with the best 14 and 15-year-olds in the United States.
You're just like, what's the deal with fractions?
Well, in 99, the United States Youth Academy teamed up with the IMG Academy and said, hey, we're sending all of our best players to you so they can kind of know each other and come through the ranks. And I thought it was interesting because like when we heard with Andre Agassi, who was like, I hated it. And Freddy Adu was flat out like, I hated it.
Well, I think it leads to hate because now it's a job when you're 11.
When you're 11.
You're like a fucking tween, dude.
And
like
that was
fun is just all sucked out of, like, the thing that you love has just become a business. And granted, it should. Sports is a business. But that's like
not at that
in
time.
Your late teens, 20s. Not when you're 11.
Yep.
You're like, oh, hey, Digimon's on TV.
Well, that was the other thing was he said he couldn't connect with anybody because they were 3 years older. Yeah. And there's that huge gap, especially when you're that old. And he said that he just really couldn't find any friends when he was there. So it was all soccer, all training. And it kind of made him distance himself from what is a team sport to almost become more individualistic.
You become a depressed robot. That's all I can think of.
Yes. So he
does well. I mean,
I was going to say it's interesting because he really flourishes on this academy, which it's very good for his game. But like you were saying, like you could almost see it later on not being not being the right path.
You get to a point where you're like, oh, soccer again, man. Like, just it's taken out of you.
Yeah.
It's taken
So,
out.
and this is when we see his best part of his best game is the international game.
Yeah.
So he's 13, 14, because all this shit happens over summer, and he was born in June. And they have the under 17 World Championships. And against South Korea, he has this moment, and it was interesting because it was like the guy who is currently the director at AC Milan and this other guy who ends up writing this article about him, and they're sitting there and they watch him score 3 goals, have a hat trick, and have like one of these goals where he pretty much splits like 4 South Korean defenders.
Oh, wow.
And slots it home. And the AC Milan guy, the director, looks at him and he's just like, this kid could be the best player in the world. And that was coming off of this youth 17 tournament, because he was 13. People were like, nobody, this is pre-Messi.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to be this kid's equal, was what everybody was thinking.
He's like Pelé almost. Like, that's what everyone would seem to be thinking.
Ooh, man, that's a nice little foreshadow into our next thing. So he comes home from this U17 game, this U17
and he's 13.
world championship, and he's 13. And his agent at the time said, because he had just signed with this agent, said every club wanted him.
Oh, I'm sure.
There wasn't a club that, that had big finances that wasn't interested.
Oh, man. The world is his oyster at this juncture. Oh, my God.
But we just see FIFA coming in with the rules about transfer of youth players from one country to another.
Yeah, wasn't that what we talked about in one of the episodes? Because they were like signing all these kids out of Africa and they were becoming hobos and shit.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they were signing them with no ways back and like
one-way tickets and shit.
Yeah. So they were telling him that there's ways to get past this, but and this is where I feel bad for him. He's getting really bad advice, and people are saying, "Hey, you need to be a first-team player right now."
Yeah.
So like, say he would go to Manchester United, or say he would go to Chelsea, or say he would go to pretty much any. Actually, Ajax was one that he might have went to.
Oh, Johan Cruyff and shit. Okay.
Yep. But they were saying like you have to be in our youth academy for 18 months.
Oh, they were telling him to fuck that? Oh.
No, if you come, like those are the rules. Like we have to.
I mean, like, that he was getting the advice to tell these instead of being like, yeah, I'll do it, whatever. And it's like the one and done rule in college for basketball.
Exactly. And MLS, and this is the worst part. MLS comes in and they're saying, no, you're this phenom, and we want you to be America's
Jesus
next guy
for soccer.
Yeah. And this all happens because there was a Sports Illustrated article.
Yep, I remember reading it back in the day.
Well, and it's the same guy who wrote the article about LeBron James. And he said, it was such a great article that I was thinking, how can I not write this one about Freddy Adu, this next phenom who's like 4 years younger? And it really, there's this interview that I heard with both of them, and he goes, do I owe you an apology? And it's such a, and he just goes, no, not at all, man. It's like, there was just all kinds of, because this is where the hype train started.
Oh, yeah.
Off of this Youth 14. And then when the MLS finally convinced him, like, hey, come to the MLS.
Well, the MLS is doing it, and this is what I've read. They're like, soccer is not in America what it is the rest of the world. You need asses and seats. You need excitement. It's almost like all these upstart leagues that we've done before.
Yep.
They're all like, the WHA is a good one, how they got Gretzky and all those good young players. They're just like, hey, you're younger. Just come and play for us. We need excitement. And, oh, man, that is so brutal.
Now, I'll tell you one other thing that they really wanted was a young black star. They hadn't had – Kobe Jones was like one of the only black stars at that time in soccer.
Oh, so
in America.
Aspect.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
so,
interesting.
like you were saying, American soccer is very white. So they really needed black stars, and that's what they saw as Freddy Adu, of like this guy. So in this time where he agrees to sign with MLS, Nike comes in.
Yeah.
Nike comes in because he turns 14, and Nike comes in and says, "Hey, we'll give you a 4-year contract until you're 18 for $1 million."
Oh man, you're gonna take the money.
And well, he said it was actually one of his greatest moments because he said his mother never had to work again after he signed that contract.
That's adorable.
This,
I like that.
yeah, that was one of the things where I was like, "Hell yeah, Freddie, you do. That's awesome." So he agrees to get into the MLS draft, and this one made me laugh.
This is
so
like all
hard.
the other sports leagues because they fucking allocate him somewhere.
So this makes me laugh so hard. So he agrees to go to the MLS, and but with the stipulation that he has to go to DC United because he wants to stay in his home borough.
Mom lives there.
His mom lives there.
Can you imagine living somewhere else from your family at 14?
Well, that was what and they were so into it because MLS being a single entity league, they are into the collusion.
Yeah.
They were just like, okay, we're
They
going
fucked over Dallas again, as we discussed in a previous
Well, this
episode.
is what I found so fucking funny was they all force Dallas Burn at the time they beat their FC Dallas now.
Yeah.
They forced the Dallas Burn to trade the #1 pick, who is Freddie Adu, who they don't want to do.
No.
And they force him to trade it to DC United, this is why MLS I absolutely hate, who had the #1 pick the year before.
Oh.
So, like, they're literally got 2 #1 picks back to back.
Can I just say that Dallas Burn sounds like a chlamydia-run organization?
I think somebody finally made that realization. They're
Yeah,
like, we should be FC Dallas.
Yeah.
So he agrees to go to DC United. A funny-ass thing that I heard from the DC United camp was we had to trade for him. We had to give up value. And then somebody said, equal value? Silence.
Yep, exactly.
Before his first professional game, though, this was what is the downfall.
Yeah,
so
this is kind of just the...
Pepsi comes in with the Sierra Mist commercial.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody tells him, but Pelé is there.
Oh, sweet.
And this is where everybody starts making the connections. Like you were saying, everyone's saying he's going to be the next Pelé. He's going to be the biggest. What was said by Nike was he's going to be bigger than Michael Jordan because he's going to be completely international.
Well, and I can see Nike taking that stance because who before him had signed with Nike who was an American player?
Exactly.
Know? Like you want to grow your brand for soccer. That's so many more soccer shoes made for your company and so many people buying it because they're like, oh, Freddie Adu's the shit. Like,
yeah. So he meets up with Pelé, and there's all this connection with them. And this is before he's ever played his first professional game.
Oh, my God.
So it's just
He
incorrect hype.
He got the soccer version of the LeBron treatment.
Yeah, but even LeBron played fucking years of high school.
No, I know. But I'm just saying he got that treatment without just flat out dominating 4 years
of
like post age 14.
So he comes into this DC United team, and the #1 pick from the last year was I'm trying to find his name. I can't find his first name, but it's Eskandarian was his last name.
Okay.
Aleko Eskandarian, and Eskandarian's number is 11. Freddie Adu, after he gets drafted by DC United, there's like Eskandarian gets called into the office, and he thinks that they traded him because Adu kind of plays similar position.
Midfield.
And they bring him in, and they ask him to give up his number 11, because Nike and Pepsi all have this number 11 push because he was wearing number 11 in the U17.
Man, you can't take away Alonso away from a motherfucker. That's bullshit.
And this is why I thought Eskandarian's response was wonderful. He was like, you know what? I'm just coming off of practice. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow about it. And he went home and he talked to his dad, and his dad goes, you're not a prostitute, and they're going to offer you money for it because they're like desperate for this marketing thing. And
that happens in the NFL all the time.
And you just say, you know what? If you want my number, you have to trade me. And that's what he told them. And they just go, whoa, we don't want that whatsoever.
Oh, bro.
And so he goes back and like tells his team, and his team's like, fuck that. Fuck him. And it really started like this animosity between everybody.
I'd be
so
like, hey,
he keeps his number.
Yeah. But I'd be like, hey, Nike, why don't you put me in a commercial and then, like, I'll give away my numbers.
Well, yeah. Well, he keeps his number, and this is what...
I'm a whore at heart. I'm just telling everyone that.
This is the curse that I feel like Freddie Adu has to live, is his people or reputation shows up before he does.
Exactly.
So he shows up first day with DC United. Everybody's kind of not liking him. There's various reasons why I'll bring this up. And he said, Eskandarian said, he made a beeline for me with this huge smile. And it was just like, hey, man, it's not even a big deal that you didn't give up the jersey. I don't even really give a shit. It was Nike. And it's this thing where it was like, they all thought he was like being like, how can this guy not give up this jersey? And he's just like, I don't give a shit. It's totally fine, man. Don't even worry. And he said, and Eskandarian and him are still friends to this day. And he was just like, yeah, no, like the people around him were not correct.
Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engel Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs. Yeah, no, I mean, it's almost like Mike Tyson. He just surrounded himself after a while with just terrible people.
Well, here's my thing was, it wasn't terrible people. It was people who had a misconception of
Ignorant
what it was.
people, I should say. Not terrible. It's the road to hell is paved with the best intentions. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Another thing that all these professional men with families and lives hated was
beards.
He came in at 14 and was getting paid $500,000, and they weren't getting paid near. He was the highest paid player for like 2 years. So there was definitely resentment, and this is what I was kind of talking to you about. Was he never tracked back and played defense when he was younger, because he was such the star that he felt like he didn't need to.
Which is bullshit, man.
This giant hole in his game. Yeah. Giant hole. And DC United immediately was just like, no, like trying to discipline him, and really was doing really well at it. Their coach, Peter Novak, was a huge coach, you know what I mean, in the MLS days. And he really was making him a substitute because he was fucking 14, man. It was crazy. Like
the idea of a 14-year-old playing a professional sport is just bananas.
Yeah.
Like, what were Agassi and Chris Everett? Like, they were in their later teens when they like started playing pro tennis.
Started breaking through.
Yeah, like 14.
Yep.
Oh man.
So DC
without a year like in Europe, without a year to being seasoned, bringing up, learning the game and
just with some international tourneys under his belt, because he really didn't have that in and out club soccer youth academy program that he needed.
Yeah, like, because imagine what if he plays high school soccer?
Yeah.
Granted, he probably doesn't end up going to college and probably goes to Europe, but like, he still played more minutes. He still gained experience and learned and shit. Holy cow.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. So his game has holes: defense, tactical awareness, and DC United don't have a great year. They're like halfway through. I think they're at like 500.
Okay.
And he's used as a sub, on the right wing, and it's so fucking funny because it's almost the exact same time. He's used as a sub on the right wing, exactly how Messi was originally used, and he's just like, his coach is like, just go into the middle and score. And what Adu wants is, he wants to be Pelé, and he wants to be in the middle of the field, and that's what people are kind of telling him. It's like, you need to be number 10, you need to be the star, and it was just incorrect for his type.
Yeah.
He was a winger, and he should have been our best winger ever, but it
never materialized.
No. But this first season, I gotta say, they kind of get their shit together, and they win like 5 of 6 at the end.
Wow.
And they go to the finals of the MLS Cup, and they end up winning. So it's kind of interesting because they were so shitty.
Yeah.
And he kind of just like, they kind of just come together,
But you think about it, it's like, oh, this was supposed to happen because he's on our team. It's just he's a substitute.
Yes, but he wasn't that substitute. Yes, he wasn't that integral. Next season, almost because I think he had five goals and 3 assists in his rookie season, but he played in all 34 games. So he started like 12, but he was a substitute in every other game.
Oh, geez.
And they said they won the MLS Cup, and he came up to Novak like the next day, and he goes, "That was great, MLS Cup, but I want to play every game. I want to start every game." So the next year, Novak was like, "Yeah, okay," almost the exact same playing statistics.
But like, did anybody, like any of his handlers, assume? This is just my own question. Like, okay, so he doesn't go to Europe and he doesn't play in their developmental leagues. What's going to happen in America? He's just going to start right away? Like,
Yes,
did
that's
they not
what-
anticipate that?
That's
Really?
what.
Oh
So
my God.
supposedly there was a call from like somebody at the top head at the MLS office in the first game, asking if Freddy was going to be a starter or a substitute.
Sweet Jesus.
And the DC United said, "This is so unbelievably inappropriate that you're calling, wondering, asking about who's starting on
Strategy.
our team."
It's like, this is our team right here.
And that was the other thing
Against grown-ass men.
they were bringing him up correctly. That's what was so shitty was DC United is actually a great MLS franchise, and they were doing exactly what they should have done, which was bringing him up, making him more physically strong, and it just sucked so much because I felt like this is where all the outside influence started to come in, where it was like,
Well, yeah, because that's when the money starts coming in too.
he has a shit ton of money. So second season, they have a pretty bad season right before the playoffs. He comes out, it was like a week before. He comes out in this interview. He's just like,
I want to play every day. Right?
I want to play more. I think they're playing me in the wrong position.
Oh.
And then Novak said, that's fine if you have that opinion, but why the fuck are you saying it out of the locker room? And then he said, if you apologize to your teammates, we won't punish you more. You know what I mean?
Well, who does that shit? Teenagers.
And dude, exactly. And he ends up refusing to apologize. He says something like, "I was right," and Novak suspends him for the game. Comes back for the next one, but it's not enough. They end up losing, and they're out of the playoffs. And he's like, at this point, he's like kind of talking trade, and they end up coming back the next season, and Novak puts him more in the middle, but it's not. They said it. He constantly wanted to be everything. He wanted to be the biggest star, and he just wasn't. So he demands a trade to Real Salt Lake.
Can you imagine being 16 and going into your boss and saying, "I demand what I want"?
Well, I kind of find it interesting because he's at this point where he kind of should become something more.
Yeah, no, totally. No, I understand that.
And people are saying that his drive is starting to wane. So he wants to be more of like a celebrity.
Well, that's what happens when you go to a labor camp when you're, 11? Like, God.
And then pumped with millions of dollars. So that's the thing. So at Real Salt Lake, this is something else, was Eskandarian ends up meeting up with him like 6 months later.
Oh, wow.
So I want to say this. It was in the off season of 2006. So it's December 11th, 2006. And it wasn't even the biggest deal that season. David Beckham came.
Oh, wow.
So that ended up being like the biggest. People said it ended the Freddy Adu era and started the Beckham era because the Freddy Adu era kind of was shitty.
Just fizzled, yeah.
So Eskandarian meets back up with him at Real Salt Lake, and he was just like, it was so different. At DC United, we would like make him pick up balls, and like he was like a real first couple of seasons, he was like a real rookie with us, and then he was like finally getting into our team. And he goes, at Real Salt Lake, they were treating him like he was a fucking celebrity, and I showed up, and they were like carrying his bags, and I was like,
wow,
what is happening here?
It is amazing that this guy is not giving hand jobs for crack somewhere.
Well, that's what. He was just like Real Salt Lake, because they were a newer club, a newer franchise, didn't know how to handle a player like him. And they were just like grateful he was there.
Yeah.
So they were horrible. They ended up going like 6-30 or 6 out of 30 or something like that. Like they were the worst team. And people were saying at this point, a bunch of articles were being written like Freddy Adu's a failure. This is over. So,
and what year is this again?
This is 2007.
So he's 18 years old and he's already a failure. Wow.
17. Yeah, 17, 18, because this is that summer.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what people are saying is like, why are we writing these articles about this kid? Because he's still a kid.
Yeah.
Millionaire kid.
Yeah, but to go immediately from just like, oh, he plays pro soccer to, oh, he's an automatic failure. That's like...
That's what people are saying was the
man.
hype was too big. Like, I remember the quote that is one of the worst was Alexi Lawless said, for Freddie Adu to live up to the hype, he would have to live a World Cup trophy. And it's like, nope, that's just so stupid for what our game was. It was just like, yeah, he's not Pelé. Like, let's get back down to reality.
He was a talented kid who had bad decisions made for him.
Yep. So, but then he had another great performance, 2007, in the Under-20 World Cup in Canada. And in this Under-20 World Cup, he ends up beating some of these, because I think they get knocked out in the quarters or the semis. But
yeah, but they did really well, I had read.
They beat Brazil, they beat Uruguay, and Brazil has some guys that are like huge now.
All-timers, yeah.
Pato and Uruguay had Luis Suarez.
I just love that. The McLovin won names. God bless you, Brazil. Oh.
And that's what I mean, though, is he was showing his skill with better players.
Yeah.
Okay, so Real Salt Lake was like the worst team, and he showed that he can't play with shitty players.
Which
he
is
needs better players around him.
Yeah, but that's almost fool's gold in a way, because if he was like what everyone's talking about, he'd be bringing those shitty players around him up, you know?
Okay, but it's not his position to do that.
No, it's not his position. I'm just saying in general.
No, I just mean like the position that he should be playing, that winger, not that center. Okay. But you're right. If he was playing the position, like the one he wanted, he would he would kind of elevate people. But the position he should play is more of like a selfish kind of.
Okay.
But off of this Youth 20 World Cup, Benfica comes in and pays what is a shit ton of money.
Yeah, what was it, $2 million?
Yeah.
For him, yeah, in the Portuguese league.
Well, from Real Salt Lake at this time, people were saying that it was not a good move.
No, I mean, but how can you turn down $2 million as a fledgling MLS franchise?
Well, that was the other. Well, not for Real Salt Lake, but for Benfica, because they felt like his development period was over.
Yeah.
Which this is what I think is completely wrong. And we'll get into what he felt like his worst mistake was. So, first season at Benfica, they have 3 different coaches.
Oh, God.
Which is something that happens to him so much it happened at Real Salt Lake, is a coach will be brought in, they'll bring Freddy in as a project, and then they'll get fired
and
literally months after. Yeah.
This just sounds like a Cleveland Browns operation.
Dude, it is so much like our next episode. It's ridiculous.
Oh, God.
But the last manager that came in didn't play him at all. So at the end of the season, he was like, I need a new home. And this is where he this is where he's still getting not soccer educated advice. So like you said, just ignorant soccer people just not giving him. So they said, hey, you should probably go on loan.
Which is just horrible. You need a spot to stay and develop.
And what happened at Benfica, because at the time they were very turbulent. They were just like, 3 managers in 1 year is pretty wild. But what happened was they got a manager that next year, and there was another player that was playing with him, Angel Di Maria, who's a Argentine, and he in that first season, Freddy Adu actually outplayed him.
No shit.
That next season, because Freddy Adu left, Angel Di Maria got all the playing time and then became one of the biggest stars in the world. So he went on to play at Real Madrid, Manchester United, PSG, and he's like one of the best wingers. And this is what Freddy Adu said is his biggest mistake in his career, was asking for a loan away from Benfica, because then he became a loan player.
Yeah, which is basically like a journeyman, I'm assuming, for like any other sport, you know?
Like you said, it's like a hired gun.
He's Ryan Fitzpatrick without a beard.
Well, and it sucks for him more than any other player or any other type of player, because he needs to develop. When you get brought in as a loan player, they don't want to fucking develop you.
No.
They want you to come in and just like plug a quick hole for a year. So and this is where, like you said, this is where he starts to just get loaned out like crazy. And
everybody
it sucks.
wants to patch him up with something, but nobody wants to be like, hey, you're in our long-term plans. Here's how we can help you.
So he makes 10 appearances with Monaco, and it really isn't shit. Then he goes to a Portuguese team in the same division and for a half a season, thinking that it's kind of going to revive him, but they don't play him.
No.
He goes to this Greek team, Ares.
Yeah, I read that. Mm-hmm.
And there was the other thing was Benfica was pretty much just ready for him to go to anywhere that would pay his salary. He goes to Greece, and Greece gets into that huge financial.
Oh yeah, their economy took just an absolute dump in the late aughts.
This is 2008, 2009.
Yeah, exactly. The world's economy did, but
so they refused They refused to pay him.
Oh no!
And they ask him to sign a contract that pretty much lets him go and negates all money that they owe him, and he refuses.
Oh no!
So they overtrain him and injure him. So it's like it's one of the most fucked up situations. So he leaves fucking he leaves Greece in just a horrible situation. And then in 2011, he signs with this Turkish side, and they said it was one of his best signings because he didn't speak the local language, and all he did was show up and play soccer and then go home.
Which is perfect.
That's what he needed.
Career, yeah.
And then in his last stint, so he doesn't make the 2010 World Cup.
No, honey.
And he's 21. And this is the realization that his career,
over.
It's not even that it's over, but it's not because he still thinks that he can be a great player, but this was the World Cup that he had envisioned him taking over the world.
The hype train just went off the rails.
And everybody knows at this point it's fucking over. The hype train. 2012 Gold Cup, though. Did you see that?
Yeah. I got it in my notes here.
That's when he finally comes for the full senior squad.
Yeah.
So before it was always under
20, under 17 and shit. Yeah.
And this is where we see the giant holes in his game. So fucking great offensive player. Semifinals, sets up Clint Dempsey with the unbelievable run and pass.
No defense.
The finals, he gets the start. Okay, against Mexico, and he has a absolutely wonderful 50 minutes. The problem is soccer is 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So he has our 2 assists, one to Donovan, one to Bradley, and then you can just see him gas out.
Oh,
and
man.
there's just holes in our formation, and they finally sub him out, and it's just that's the other thing was he was such a super sub that there wasn't that necessarily stable backup to come in. So Mexico ends up beating us 4-2.
Weak.
It's one of the better games ever. It was like a really great game, but like that game I feel like encompasses him as a player because he looks back on it as one of his best times. But if you're looking at it as like soccer, you're like, yeah, you're not a starter.
Yeah.
So that's where, for me, that's when it like everybody's just like, that was great, but what the fuck? So like right after the Gold Cup loss, Jurgen Klinsmann comes in as the coach.
Yep, I remember that.
And he says, I'm not going to pick Freddy. He's not even in my plans.
Yeah, not even in long or short term. Like,
and that's when it's sad because he goes to the Philadelphia Union.
he goes back to MLS. Yeah.
This is his last MLS go, and you can just see he's just not the player, and he's a squad player.
Yeah, he's fodder for practice, pretty much. That's what he is.
Well, no, they actually pay him a shitload.
Well,
but he's just not the star.
Exactly.
So he's a name at this point. And I think he has like 5 goals. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
He does not show up at all. And he should have been an assist machine, but it just wasn't. wasn't right. So then he just goes on this fucking journeyman tour.
Magical mystery tour.
Yep. A fucking Serbian club. Actually, I think I'm jumping ahead.
A Brazilian club.
A Brazilian
right?
club
Yeah.
who end up not paying him. That's where he went. He went MLS to Brazilian, and the Brazilian club said that they weren't going to pay him and told him to fuck off.
Oh my God.
And then he went to a
Serbia.
Serbian, Finnish club,
Sweden,
Tampa Bay. He
Yeah.
played in Las Vegas.
Tampa Bay Rowdies. They should be
Yep.
called the Tampa Bay Florida Men.
Yeah. And he ended up, I saw an interview with him recently that said he got into youth coaching.
Yeah.
This was 2019.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that could be his real connection because he knows exactly what not to do with these kids.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
Look, I know what's wrong.
Yeah. Like you said, he tried out for a Swedish team. I think this is the thing that has to wrap up his entire career.
Yeah.
It was a third division semi-pro Swedish team.
These are guys that are like probably truck drivers and shit during the day.
Well, he tried out and they said he has so much potential, but he just doesn't want to be there. So
Yeah,
he
'cause-
just didn't have the heart.
Yeah, and it was sucked out of him.
Yes.
Like, it's not necessarily his fault. It's like anybody would probably feel that way about it.
Yep. And luckily for American soccer, we don't do that to our 13-year-old prodigies anymore. We let them develop. But yeah,
Thank God.
it really is a showing of what not to do with a kid.
Oh, man, totally.
We vanilla iced this kid.
We totally did. No parachute pants.
Hey everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Angle Studio. Thank you all very much.